This is an RNZ podcast.
The US and Israel attack Iran, and Iran fires back.
Khamenei is dead.
Back here, the Prime Minister tries to hold his tongue, but gets it tied up in knots. With a word as innocuous as any, causing all sorts of problems.
Any actions that stops Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is a good thing. I don't know how to be any clearer, guys. I just said to you, I've misspoke.
Kia ora, ko Giles Dexter aho. Aine te porongo tōranga pū mō tēnei wiki. Welcome to Focus on Politics. Last weekend, Donald Trump, who pre-Oval Office criticised previous presidents for military action in the Middle East, launched a fresh wave of military action in the Middle East.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people.
Iran hit back, targeting Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The death toll has ticked over 1,000. President Trump later confirmed the attacks, named Operation Epic Fury, or Operation Roaring Lion from the Israeli side, had killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, ending nearly 4 decades of his rule.
Last night, all over Iran, the voices of the Iranian people could be heard cheering and celebrating in the streets.
And some Iranians in New Zealand were celebrating the end of the Ayatollah, including Dr. Farouk Amin and Dr. Reza Fahour.
We don't apologize for feeling that way. And I don't want people to, take it as like Iranian loves war or Iranian loves violence. What people need to understand is that this supreme leader has been the symbol of a system that has brought enormous suffering to our people for 47 years.
They took their dignity, they took their history from them, and they tried to kill them. For every single voice they raise, they try to kill them. That's why people are very happy, and they are celebrating because he's dead. But it's not finished yet. We want to move toward secular democracy system.
Others had more mixed reactions. Former Green MP Golriz Ghahraman said while a lot of Iranian expats shared the US desire for regime change, she found it hard to see the US as a liberating force.
Every Iranian outside of Iran is in some way personally affected by the violence of that regime. It is incredibly prolific in terms of detaining people, torturing people, disappearing people. We all know someone or are personally affected by this, and of course we are all displaced in some way by that regime. So the emotions are high. There are some who are incredibly hopeful that this will lead to swift regime change. Some are deeply worried that what will happen is what we've seen happen to other nations in the region, which is that they'll be devastated, and then previous tyrannical regimes like the Taliban will be reinstated by the US, for example. And those who have families still on the ground are just deeply worried.
That is something the president eventually became mindful of.
I guess the worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen. We don't want that to happen. That would probably be the worst. You go through this and then in 5 years you realize you put somebody in who was no better. So we'd like to see somebody in there that's going to bring it back for the people.
The debate in New Zealand quickly turned to the legality of the attacks. The Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister released a statement saying New Zealand acknowledged that the actions taken by the US and Israel were designed to prevent Iran from continuing to threaten international peace and security. The statement then condemned Iran for its retaliatory strikes and called for a resumption in negotiations. Winston Peters, shortly before jetting off to South America, said New Zealand had not been given notice of the attacks. He said all sorts of people would want to pontificate on whether or not the attacks were legal, and he wouldn't be one of them.
Iran has been the promoter of terrorism in countless theatres for decades now. Now, that's not an excuse for what you've seen, but it is an explanation.
Robert Patman, an international relations professor at the University of Otago, was quick to criticise the government's response, saying the attacks broke international law.
I think it's quite clear that most Kiwis, they support the idea that international relations or foreign policy should be based on rules and treaties and institutions. And what we have at the moment is an administration in Washington that doesn't share that view. I mean, we've got to stop looking at the Trump administration with rose-tinted glasses. It does not share New Zealand's worldview. Mr. Trump has no time for multilateralism, and he has no time for international institutions, unless those international institutions are working under American tutelage. And so that's a completely different view of the world from most Kiwis, whether they be right, left or centre.
Former Prime Minister Helen Clark called the government's response a disgrace.
The whole point of international law is to put rules around when force is legitimate. And a strike is justified if there is an imminent threat of attack, which clearly there was not. This has been widely observed by many countries and by the UN Secretary General, but the New Zealand government seems only interested in the Iranian retaliation and not looking at the reason for the retaliation, which was the attack by the United States and Israel.
The Prime Minister, on Morning Report on Monday, repeatedly declined to pass judgment.
So the strikes were the right thing to do morally?
Well, again, it's up to the Americans and the Israelis to explain the legal basis, because they will have information that will give them the confidence that they have been acting or compliant with international law. But that is a decision for them to talk
What do you think? What do you think as the leader of this country? Were the strikes the right thing to do morally?
Well, the strikes have actually removed a supreme leader who actually has been destabilising both the world in terms of threatening peace and security in the globe.
A few hours later, as he rocked up to his weekly post-cabinet press conference, Christopher Luxon stuck to his guns.
We're not best placed to make that assessment. We weren't proxy or party to these attacks. They are independently launched by the US and Israel. They will have information and intelligence that we haven't received. We weren't briefed in advance. We haven't had a subsequent briefing. So really it's up for them to assert whether these are legal actions or not.
He insisted the stance was consistent with other nations. Despite Canada and Australia saying they supported the strikes and New Zealand just acknowledging them, Christopher Luxon said they were pretty much speaking the same language, and his position was the same as New Zealand government's past.
We've had a long-standing, commitment under successive governments that any actions that stops Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is a good thing. Any actions that take to stop them from sponsoring terrorism is a good thing. Any actions that stops them from killing their own people is a good thing. This is not a good regime, and that has been a long-standing position of New Zealand governments under different administrations. And so that's as far as I can say. I haven't got anything else to add to that.
That any prompted questions of the level New Zealand was prepared to support. Carpet bombing, for example. The Prime Minister was backed into a corner and got flustered.
Well, I mean, we obviously understand. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that we understand this. I don't know how to be any clearer, guys. I mean, we've had a long set. Sorry?
It was, as Audrey Young from the New Zealand Herald called it, the Prime Minister's Claire Curran moment. A fumble and a stumble. And one Labour leader, Chris Hipkins, pointed out was actually wrong.
That does not reflect the position that successive New Zealand governments have taken. Successive New Zealand governments have expressed significant concern about the Iranian regime, but that does not justify any action, particularly when it breaches international law.
By Tuesday morning, the Prime Minister had realised, or been made aware of, his mistake, and the backpedalling began.
Well, I think I misspoke on that. I mean, we've long supported action to make sure that Iran doesn't get its hands on nuclear weapons, as I said yesterday. As I said, that is any action that means that Iran doesn't get its hand on a nuclear weapon. Now, but it's not at any cost, obviously. Well, as I said to you, I said any actions rather than action, long supported action. Well, no, I just said to you, I misspoke. I meant action.
Words matter, to quote our Foreign Affairs Minister, and in this particular instance, words matter a great deal. Adherence to international law shouldn't be a matter of discretion. It should be something that we expect all countries to adhere to.
That night, he was then forced to correct an answer he gave to the Greens' Chloe Swarbrick on visa extensions.
To be perfectly clear, Immigration New Zealand has a well-established process for international conflicts and will facilitate and take a pragmatic approach to visa renewal when people are unable to return home.
He is not across his brief. He simply does not seem to understand the weight of the things that he is talking about.
A Prime Minister getting their words right in the cauldron of geopolitics is much more important than a broadcasting minister and her Gmail account. As Winston Peters told 3 News on Wednesday, if anyone had spoken to him first, there wouldn't have been any confusion.
But I would say this to you. Why did you call the Foreign Affairs Minister? Then no one would have misspoken, would they? Why did you and your journalistic colleagues call the Foreign Affairs Minister the person who's in charge of these issues and saved all the agony of misunderstanding?
Did it concern you when you heard what he said?
By the time I had heard it was out in the ether for too many hours because I was on a plane. And we were out of communications, you see.
How concerning is it that the Prime Minister is misspeaking on foreign affairs?
Look, this is not a matter of that. It's a storm in a teacup, really. This is, you know what it looks like. It's the mainstream media and our political opponents having a got you moment.
Other countries sought to raise their heads above the parapet. Spain denied the US the use of its military bases, and President Trump threatened to cut all trade. So maybe there is a good reason New Zealand's keeping its head down. After the green shoots of last year were cut down by tariffs and global uncertainty, the government had hoped this year the recovery would blossom anew. And it's mindful this conflict could put it back to square one again. It's still early days, but the longer the combatants dig in, the more people will feel it at the checkout and the pump here. Parliament resumed on Tuesday with a special debate, a chance for all parties to put on the record where they stand.
I want to acknowledge that there are different views on the legitimacy of the actions taken by the US and Israel. I respect those views and the vigour with which they have been offered. New Zealand, unlike Iran, is a flourishing democracy. But surely there can be no doubt about the importance to all of us of preventing Iran from continuing on its pathway of repression, state-sponsored terrorism and a well-documented pursuit of nuclear weapons.
International law applies to everyone, including our friends and allies. That's right. No country should place itself above international law. We have a proud history as New Zealand of standing for peace, for the rule of law, for multilateral solutions. On issues of war and peace, we should not be timid. We should be principled. Those are our values as New Zealanders. And it is also in our interests to stand up for those values.
The government is right that for a small state like New Zealand, the rules-based international order is all we have to protect our interests against those of military powers. And yet, this government refuses to take action to uphold that very order that they have professed to agree with when it is violated by the United States and Israel.
There will be people who will want to debate what international law means in this context. There will be some who say that it is never important and that might is always right. There will be others who will say that international law gives unconditional protection to the most murderous dictators, even when they kill tens of thousands of their own people. The truth is that will probably be a question debated for many decades by experts in universities. But right now, I hate to say, the world is not waiting for New Zealand to cast its judgment on that question.
Yes, we might be buried deep down in the south of the Pacific, but when we start to align to all of these regimes across the world that are inflicting pain and suffering, what is the impact on our people? What is the impact on our people? We're already in a living crisis. This is going to give the pinch to our people even more.
New Zealand First was the only party not to take a call. Its leader was 10,000 kilometres away, reminding everyone of the government's line. But even from South America, Winston Peters was, along with Defence Minister Judith Collins, hatching plans to get New Zealanders out of danger. On Thursday morning, they confirmed 2 Defence Force planes will be sent over as a contingency. The flights will be short. The aim is to get people to the nearest safe country and then go back for the next lot.
If our defence can go in and the need is still there and they can get people out, they need to be able to turn on a dime, frankly. They need to be able to go now, not let's wait another 3 days. Because, by the way, lots of other stuff can change. So they've just got to trust that they know what they're doing and that they will do it the best they can, as fast as they can.
We're doing our best with the utilities we have. Thank heavens we've got this military aircraft to help out. Our team is working defence and foreign affairs around the clock, using all their experience to ensure that they can intervene to help them in the most safe way possible. So hang on, because help is on its way.
In the background of all of this, early in the week, as it does every month, pollster Curia was gathering the pulse of the public. And on Friday, the Taxpayers Union Curia poll landed. National had dropped to 28.4%, a drop of 2.9, and Christopher Luxon's worst result since he became leader. It's unlikely the Prime Minister's performance on Monday and Tuesday is solely to blame for the result, but the caucus will be worried after what's been a tough week. Christopher Luxon's verbal mix-up may not have any impact on the war or New Zealand's independent foreign policy, but it could have long-lasting implications for his leadership. That was Focus on Politics. Make sure to follow us in your favourite podcast app or seek out RNZ's Politics NZ podcast feed and subscribe there. I'm Giles Dexter. Thanks for joining us. Mā te wā.